Hello everyone, welcome to today's lesson. Miss Gate here. We will be looking at complex sentences. What is a complex sentence? A complex sentence is a sentence that has one main clause and one or more subordinate clauses. Now when we say the main clause, let us consider it to be the parent of clauses and the subordinate clause to be the child or children of the clauses. The main clause is also called the principal clause, and this is a clause that makes sense by itself. This is the part of the sentence that can stand alone, that has weight and makes sense by itself. The subordinate clauses, however, are like the children. They're dependent on their parents, and so they cannot survive on their own, and so we call those subordinate clauses or dependent clauses. A complex sentence would have one main or principal clause and one or more than one subordinate clauses. Now let us look at examples of the main clause. Remember that the main clause is also called the independent clause. It makes sense by itself. For example, the soldiers marched. We saw Mary. Mom gave me a snack. COVID-19 is a pandemic. Those are clauses. Those can be considered as main clauses because they make sense by themselves. We understand fully whatever is the particular thought being conveyed. None of them begin with a conjunction. These can also be considered as simple sentences. We looked at simple sentences in a previous lesson. As said earlier, the subordinate clause is also called the dependent clause. Now this is the clause that does not make sense by itself because it depends on the main clause to give it its meaning. It's like a baby depending on their parents. For example, while the musicians played, after the show, when I finished my homework because I was hungry. That started in Wuhan, China, before spreading to the whole world. None of these make sense by themselves. What happened after the show? What happened while the musicians played or before the musicians played? These clauses leave us with questions. None of them express a complete thought. None of them make sense without being attached to the parent or main or principal clause. This is why they are considered subordinate clauses or dependent clauses. Now, how do you easily identify subordinate clauses? If a clause starts with a subordinating conjunction, it is no longer able to stand on its own and make sense by itself. The conjunction makes the clause subordinate. And here are some common subordinating conjunctions for you to take note of. Now let us look at some examples of complex sentences. Number 1. The soldiers marched while the musicians played. 2. We saw Mary after the show. In the first sentence, the first part of the sentence, we see our main or our principal clause. The soldiers marched. Introducing the subordinate clause is the subordinating conjunction while, and the subordinate clause in this case is while the musicians played. Similarly, we saw Mary after the show. The principal clause is we saw Mary. The subordinating conjunction is after. The subordinate clause is after the show. Here we have some other examples. Mom gave me a snack when I finished my homework because I was hungry. The principal clause is Mom gave me a snack. The subordinate clause is when I finished my homework because I was hungry. We have two subordinate clauses here. We have the subordinating conjunctions when and because. Another example, COVID-19 is a pandemic that started in Wuhan, China, before spreading to the world. The principal clause or the main clause here is COVID-19 is a pandemic. And you have your subordinate clause that started in Wuhan, China before spreading to the whole world. As usual, I like to include exercises here for you. Which of these are complex sentences? To help you recognize the complex sentence, look for the clauses in the sentences. If you see a subordinating conjunction at the beginning of the clause, then the sentence is complex. So, which of these are complex sentences? I hope you have learned a lot. That's all for now. Goodbye.